All right, I have finally had access to Etsy's new marketplace insights, and so I am going to live react to my first experience with this as we go and share everything with you. So I'm super excited to see whether this is worthwhile or not. So let's dive in and have a look. So let me make myself a little bit smaller so we can actually see what on earth is going on. So in case you haven't got it yet, this is where you come and find it. So inside your Etsy dashboard, you'll see where you used to just have the stats button. You now have shop traffic, which is your normal stats, and then marketplace insights, which is obviously this new tool. Now, when you come in here, you'll be able to see certain keywords that are, Etsy's telling us are trending right now. So we have keychain, patches, hair accessories, scarves. They're quite high level, which makes sense because these are, big searches that are happening right now on Etsy. So what Etsy said here, search terms you're seeing below reflect what buyers are looking for, which might not always reflect what's allowed on Etsy. Now, I know that I have seen from other people using this right now that people are seeing, copyright terms coming up in this space. So you do need to still be really, really careful that Etsy isn't leading you down the wrong path here. They are just pulling in basically at a top level what a lot of people are searching for right now, okay? And you can see that they've split it between different categories, so all of the different categories we can sell under, so you can go to the one that makes the most sense for you. So you've got, like I said before, keychain, and these are going to be top level searches because ultimately Etsy is showing us the very high level of what the most searches, I believe what the most searches are right now, okay? So they're not going to be specific. We're not necessarily going to want to, hammer these keywords because these keywords, while they are top level, a lot of people are searching for them, they might not be that relevant to your products. So please don't look at this and think, how on earth can I stuff that keyword into my listing and make it relevant? We still want to prioritize the most relevant keywords to our listings because we want the most relevant traffic to come to our listings that are ultimately going to check out and convert, okay? So you can flick through them all. You can see the different things that people are looking for. So oil paintings, digital art, nursery art, custom portraits. These have always been super popular on Etsy, and you can just flick through as many of these as you want to. Take a look at all of them to get some inspiration, but obviously the ones that are most relevant to your category are going to be the most relevant to you. So for me, that would be weddings. I am a wedding stationer, and I can see engagement ring, wedding gift, wedding guest book, and veil are the four kind of keywords that Etsy are pulling out as the most popular here. And there's quite a stark difference between the amount of people searching for engagement rings, which is much higher than I ever would have thought, and wedding gifts versus, wedding guest book and veils. They're quite further down the path. This is there's more customers up the top end here, starting to look at those engagement rings. Then we have got more customers buying wedding gifts, because if you think for every couple that are getting married, how many guests are buying gifts for them? And then this is down the line where people, of course, are actually at the wedding planning stage, okay? So this doesn't really help me massively. I don't sell any of these items. So let's have a look at the actual bit we really, really want to care about and want to pay attention to. So Etsy has got a little how-to guide here. You can read the full guide if you open it up, and it's going to take you over to the handbook and talk you through a bit about Etsy SEO and how marketplace insights actually work here. So you can use it to improve your listings. You can use it to find new opportunities, plan your listings and inventory stage. So take a look through this. Make sure always recommend make sure you're reading what Etsy is telling us, but it's basically just going to walk you through, top level what marketplace insights is. All right, so let's check out the good stuff that we are really here for. So we get 15 searches a week. You can upgrade to Etsy Plus for unlimited searches. I'm going to check it out and let you know my opinion as to whether I think that's worthwhile or not. So enter a search term to find out how buyers are searching on Etsy, dig into the competitive landscape and discover similar keywords to help optimize your shop. So I'm going to start with my main keyword that I know drives a lot of traffic for me, which is wedding table plans. So let's go. That was pretty fast. So, real-time data for the last 30 days. We've got 1.2 thousand searches and 19,000 search results. This is interesting because if anyone has been on Etsy for a while, you'll remember that you used to be able to see at the top how many products returned for the searches that you were typing in, so that you kind of would know what the search competition was. Now, Etsy got rid of that a while ago. They also add in things like ads these days, so the actual return is different, completely different to what you are actually expecting to see. But this is interesting to see that we have got, actual competition numbers here as well. We can see this kind of trend up and down through the month, which is quite interesting as well. And what you could do is compare this to your current actual traffic trends too, to see if this is in line with the similar sort of trends that you're seeing. Obviously there will be different numbers, but if they're in line with the similar trend, then you know that roughly this is probably about right, that you are kind of actually showing up for those search terms. Now I would like to see longer than 30 days. I think it is a shame that we don't have more than 30 days here, because we want to know really what the trend is over the year. So when Etsy first discussed this and first kind of announced this was coming, and people started to get a sneak peek of it, I was pretty excited at the prospects of not needing search term platforms like eRank and things like that, and this being potentially a replacement for it. Now we never know what might come in the future. They might show us more longer term trends for these search volumes, but for right now I would say that this is somewhat helpful, but the last 30 days only really tells us whether or not people are actively searching for it right now, which is always good to know that there is demand for it right now. But for me personally, I know that it's not wedding season right now. So does that mean that this search volume of 1.2 thousand searches, does that mean that that's significantly higher over the summer? My guess is yes, because my sales are significantly higher over the summer, but I would love to see that from Etsy data too. So nothing really is standing out to me here in terms of whether or not this is a worthwhile search term to use, other than the fact that there is a good search volume. There's quite a high amount of competition, but it's not crazy. And we can also kind of see things like dips and peaks at certain times of the month. So it might be worthwhile going, okay, the 12th of September, the 18th, the 26th, the 3rd of October, are those days a certain day of the week? And does that suggest that that day of the week is naturally a lower traffic kind of trend to what we actually would expect to see too? And what I will probably do is compare this to my traffic trend in a second as well. So then if we come down here, we can also see similar terms and explore ideas. So our search is wedding table plan, 1,200 searches, and we have 19,000 listings in the search results. And then we can go through and see what else people are looking for. So we can see that plural, we have significantly less searches, but way more listings. So people are actually using the plural more than the singular, but actually less people are searching it. And then we have really kind of more specific, like 15 tables, wedding table plan sign, board, cards, template. And we can really see here, there's a lot of variation in these search terms. Now, what I like about this is giving us loads and loads of research ideas for us to then, go ahead and implement into our listings. Yes, the searches are lower, but for example, if I am searching for a table plan and I know I want a mirror table plan, or I know I offer a mirror table plan, this search term is more beneficial to me than this one, because this is exactly what people are searching for, right? So I think that's pretty cool. Now, winter wedding table plan, we're obviously going into winter, so I would actually have expected this search term to be higher than that. This seems really low to me, and that's really, really interesting. And what I would always do is also go and compare this to a platform like eRank. So I'm going to get that up in a second, and we can do that. Let's just click through a few more pages. Okay, so we don't have any more pages than that. It must be that if we have Etsy Plus, we can actually see more variations of that search term. So that's quite interesting. We just see the first page. But to be fair, there's quite a few ideas here. Then let's click on exploratory ideas and see what else comes up. So this must just be... This is quite similar, actually, what's actually coming up here. So I'm not sure what the difference is. Let's see if it tells us in here. Compare keywords to see which have high demand but lower listing volume. Yeah, I already know that, right? So it doesn't really tell us what the difference between similar terms and exploratory ideas are. Now, my assumption would have been here that exploratory ideas would have been broader terms and similar terms would have been, very similar terms, but these feel like a lot of the same terms. I assume if we click page 2, yeah, we can't see this. So let's compare it to let's compare this traffic trend to my search traffic trend, because I know that, wedding table plan is a core keyword that I show up for. And then let's have a look at eRank and see what the volume difference looks like. All right, so first up, I wanted to compare to my traffic trend over the last 30 days, and we can see here it's kind of been decreasing steadily over the last 30 days. And generally speaking, we're going down versus, previously at the start of the month, because we're coming out of wedding season, which is pretty normal. Now, when we look at this here, it's not really that reflective of the same trend, because this is suggesting to me that search terms are staying pretty steady, 58, 53, 56. There was a spike, a bit of higher. The highest point was at the start of September here, and it has been kind of lower than that since then. But I'm actually not seeing a downward trend in that, which is quite interesting, because this suggests that Wedding table plan has stayed somewhat, steady, the search terms over the last 30 days, but actually my traffic has been declining just very slightly. If you applied a trend line to this, it would be very slightly down. If you actually apply a trend line to this, it's pretty flat, I would say. So that's something that's quite interesting. And what I might be tempted to do is just kind of keep an eye on this each week, maybe check it again next week. Are we starting to see a decline? If not, then it'd be interesting to know, okay, does that actually mean that what's reflecting in my stats is there's something else at play there that's leading to this downward trend? Is it a different search term that actually I'm showing up more for? Because we don't 100% know our, best search terms of all time. I'm just making an educated guess based on the stats that I look at inside my own dashboard. And if you want to know what I mean by that, all you need to do is come down to your best listings. So this is my best listing for views right now, but this is my best listing for revenue right now, and this has been my best seller all year. And if we come down here, we can really see, if we scroll down, we can see the top search terms that are bringing us traffic. So this one is table plan wedding, so it's just flipped around, and then wedding table plan chart, and then there is also wedding seating chart, which is just another variation of the same keyword. So this is something I would also look at just to determine whether or not wedding seating chart is more popular than wedding table plan. And I would put that in the search up here just to compare that to make sure that we are clear which one is our strongest term, okay? Because I'm pretty sure it didn't come up here. Wedding table seating plan, but not actually wedding seating plan by itself, right? So then if we compare it to eRank, I put it in here. I have put the UK for this because I think this is a UK-based term. So sometimes when we put this in and, the US, you can see here the vast majority of the searches are UK. And the US actually isn't even coming up as one of the top searches for this because it is clearly, in the US, the terminology is probably seating chart or something like that, a little bit different, right? So what I would be looking to do is compare a similar trend. So this is obviously over the last, I think, 12 months. And we can see here a little bit of a, lower trend here for this year. I think that to me suggests that this means that this is out of date or not quite up to date data, because there's no reason that it would be significantly higher last summer than this summer, right? Whilst the wedding industry has declined versus, post-COVID times where there was a big boom in weddings and it's kind of gone back down to normal, there isn't any reason that this search term would be significantly lower than that. And then we can come over and we can see what the competition is. So eRank is pulling through 8,686 competitors, but actually Marketplace Insights is telling us that there is 19,000 search results, which is potentially bringing back things like ads, things like relevant searches, and it's giving us data. It's giving us more listings that Etsy thinks are relevant to that search term than eRank is just pulling where that tag falls into a listing, okay? So average search is 450 a month, and then if we hover over each month here, we used to be able to see the actual search trend. Maybe we can't see this anymore. Oh yeah, it's down the bottom here. So this is telling us that September was 150 searches on average, but obviously we can see that it's significantly higher than that, right? So this just shows the difference in those search terms. And actually, if we look at last year, which I do find that eRank sometimes feels a little bit out of date, it looks like last year is a little bit more accurate, so 1,300 a month here. But then again, why would there be 1,500 search terms for this in October and less in the summer months when wedding season is the summer months? So I am quite skeptical. I always have been about eRank data. I think it is good for giving us ideas. I think it is good for getting a rough gauge of trends. But I think this also shows to us that we can't really rely on any data 100%, and we need to go with our gut feel a lot of the time, which is exactly what I recommend that you do. So think like your customer, use search terms that your customer would use, and don't rely too heavily on finding the perfect keywords from these tools, because as we can see here, we're not going to find them, right? So that is this in a nutshell. Just to wrap up the way I would use this then, I would come here, I would look at your top search terms, I would scroll down and I would have a look for any similar search terms that you think might be worthwhile using here. Anything that you can see with a low number of listings but a good amount of searches. So for example, wedding table plan board. It hasn't got a ridiculously high amount of searches, but it's quite specific to what I sell, and it is quite low competition. So if I was earlier on in the journey, I would absolutely be going after this search term really, really hard, because I would know that I could have a better chance of ranking against 3,000 listings than 20,000 listings almost here. Same with this one. I might go really specific to 15 tables because this is a really low amount of competition. And also it is specific to what the customer is looking for. They want a table plan for their wedding of 15 tables, right? And obviously there is not as many people offering that for the customers, so it is worthwhile going after those 68 searches a month over the last 30 days. So what I would be doing is I would be coming up here, I would be putting in, like I say, your top search term that you think you are ranking for. I would be looking for anything down there that is similar. Perhaps if you are going with a different search term here, you might get something a little bit more varied here. So you might go for something like, let's go with kitchen wall art. So something a little bit more specific. Okay, a huge amount of searches every month, but really competitive, right? A lot of people are going after this. And then if we search down here and we scroll down, should I say, we can go for the more specific variations. So if we think we're trying to compete against 3 million listings, is there anything significantly lower that we can go for? Well, actually, kitchen wall art set of 3. Yes, there's less searches, but there's a lot less listings too. And then if we go to exploratory ideas, I wonder if there is some more ideas. So things like kitchen backsplash wall art, this is quite interesting. So it's quite a specific thing that somebody is searching for. It's not as broad as kitchen wall art, so it's a little bit more specific. It's a little bit more likely to convert if you have that kind of product. It's still quite competitive, but nowhere near in the 3 million mark, right? And I would be just looking for things here to pinpoint different search terms that might be a little bit less competitive for you. So I think the only way we can do this is to play around with it, okay? We get 15 searches a week, use them up, see what you can find, screenshot what you see so that you've kind of got a record of it, because we can clearly see that I can't now go back to that search term. I think I would then be, reusing another search term if I search wedding table plan again. So make sure you're screenshotting and you're saving those keywords that you might want to use, and then you can come in and check, if there is anything changing the next week, maybe for your top search terms, but also you can just play around with other ideas and just see what comes up here. It looks to me as though, if we go back, I wonder, okay, so it hasn't used another one of my weekly searches, which is good. It looks to me as though, exploratory ideas and similar terms, there's not much difference in them, but it's worth checking both tabs because we can actually see that there was a few different things coming up here to give us something a little bit like less broad and more specific. And then you can then obviously compare with how many competition there is down here as well. So I would love to know what you think of this tool. Do you think it's useful? Do you think it's not? Are you going to continue to use eRank, or are you going to just move on to using this altogether? I think I would love to see what Etsy goes on to do with this. Right now, I am not convinced that paying for pattern for the simple reason to have, unlimited searches is necessarily worth it. What you could do is potentially pay for it for a month and check it out and then downgrade. But right now, I think 15 searches a week is worthwhile for your core keywords. Kind of go through any ideas that you have. Have a look in eRank for ideas first if you are, or a tool that like eRank, if you are using them, come up with some brainstormed ideas, and then put a few of them into Etsy to validate whether or not they are worthwhile. And then I know that a lot of the time it is then confusing to understand, okay, yeah, but what do I do with it then? All I would be doing is experimenting with putting these keywords that you found into your tags and titles and seeing if you can get a little bit more traffic off the back of doing so, and take it from there. So let me know what you think of this tool. I would love to hear it, and I will catch you all later.